Okay, so you're thinking about reading Beautiful Disaster, and you want to know if it's worth your time.
Yeah.
We're diving deep into that today, and to help us break it all down, we have a literary critic with us who has taken a close look at this pretty controversial romance novel.
Mhm.
So, straight up, should someone read Beautiful Disaster?
It's a tough one, you know? A Beautiful Disaster is one of those books that people either love or hate.
Oh, interesting.
It's super popular, but it's also stirred up a lot of debate. So I guess it really depends on, what you're looking for as a reader and what you're comfortable with.
Okay, so we're already getting a sense that there might be some red flags here.
Maybe.
What is it about this book that has people so divided?
At the heart of it is this relationship, right? You've got Abby, this like good girl college freshman,
Right.
and then there's Travis. He's kind of the classic bad boy, fighting, womanizing,
Yeah.
the whole package. And their attraction is a huge part of the book's appeal, for sure. It's intense, super passionate, even explosive at times. But a lot of readers they're saying that the way Travis behaves is romanticizing some really unhealthy stuff, basically.
Right, now I'm getting nervous. I mean, I'm all for a brooding hero and a little drama,
Yeah.
but what's he doing exactly that's got people so concerned? Can you give us some examples?
So let's talk about Travis's possessiveness. He gets really aggressive, particularly with other men. There's even the scene where he like trashes his entire apartment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's because Abby leaves without saying goodbye.
Seriously?
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And it's not just a one-time thing. He's constantly like making threats and intimidating other guys who even just look at her.
Yeah.
It's safe to say that he's, a bit on the jealous side.
Yeah, a bit. Might be an understatement at this point.
Right.
But, okay, hear me out. Is it possible that this is just like part of the bad boy act? I mean, maybe he's just really passionate and has a rough exterior, but deep down he's actually a good guy. And maybe he even changes his ways as the story progresses.
I mean, that's what a lot of people who like the book say. And yeah, he does have some good qualities, I'll give you that. There are moments where he seems vulnerable and like he wants to be a better person. But the problem is that the book frames a lot of this negative stuff, like the possessiveness, the controlling behavior, as if it's romantic, like these grand gestures, not as the red flags that they are.
You're saying the book kind of glorifies his bad behavior.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific example? Like, what do you mean?
Well, there's this one part where Travis is controlling what Abby wears, who she talks to, basically her entire life.
Wow.
But instead of seeing it as unhealthy, it's presented as him being protective and caring.
Oh, so it's like that whole he just loves her so much kind of excuse.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
And that blurred line between passion and like straight up obsession, it runs through the whole book. A lot of people think the ending is particularly messed up.
Oh, no. What happened?
Spoiler alert, but they end up together, Abby and Travis.
Okay.
Some readers find that satisfying, but others see it as really dangerous, sending the wrong message. It's almost like the book's trying to tell us that love conquers all, even if it means ignoring huge red flags and behavior that's, well, potentially really harmful.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
Right.
So, Beautiful Disaster. It's walking a very fine line between, hot and heavy romance and like some seriously messed up stuff.
Exactly, and that's why it's so polarizing. Some people get swept up in the drama and the chemistry and love it, while others are totally turned off by, all the problematic parts. It really depends on your personal taste and what you're looking for when you pick up a romance novel.
This whole bad boy who's irresistible despite all his flaws thing, it reminds me of Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey.
I see that.
Do you think Beautiful Disaster falls into that same category of like romanticizing toxic relationships?
There are definitely similarities. Beautiful Disaster has these themes of obsessive love and power imbalances, just like those other books, like about Edward in Twilight. He's super overprotective. And then there's Christian Grey, who's, controlling is an understatement in 50 Shades. All three of these books kind of play with this fantasy that a bad boy can be redeemed by love. But they also make us question, if they're actually glorifying unhealthy relationship dynamics.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it's interesting that all three of those books were incredibly popular,
Oh, yeah.
which suggests that there's something about these kinds of stories that, people really connect with.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes this so fascinating to talk about. These books aren't just stories in isolation. They're part of a bigger cultural phenomenon, you know?
Yeah.
They reflect how we as a society are fascinated by this whole bad boy thing and this idea of forbidden love.
Right, so we're not just talking about one book here,
No.
but about our cultural values,
Right.
about what we find entertaining as a society. That's pretty profound. But let's bring it back to our listener who's wondering if Beautiful Disaster
Yeah.
is worth checking out.
Sure.
What's the verdict?
Well, should we dive into that in the next segment?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the big question, right? Should you actually read Beautiful Disaster?
Right.
Like I said before, I think it really depends on what you're looking for in a book, what kind of stories you enjoy, and how comfortable you are with some of the stuff we've been talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's
Yeah.
break it down a bit. Who do you think this book is perfect for? And on the flip side, who might want to skip it?
All right, so if you're the kind of person who loves like those whirlwind romances, the kind that totally sweep you off your feet with all the drama and intensity, Beautiful Disaster might be right up your alley. It's definitely a page turner, I'll give it that. The writing style is pretty engaging, and that chemistry between Abby and Travis, it's really hard to deny.
I can see that, yeah. I mean, even with all the, questionable stuff, there's something about that bad boy character that can be super captivating.
Totally. And that's a big part of why it's so popular, right? The readers are drawn to those intense emotions, the forbidden love aspect, the whole maybe love can conquer all, even when the guy is acting kind of messed up.
Right, but you're also saying that people who are sensitive to depictions of controlling or abusive behavior should be careful.
Right, definitely. There are scenes in the book that could be really triggering for some people. For example, there's this part where Travis, he actually gets physically aggressive with Abby.
Really?
Yeah, like he grabs her arm and leaves bruises. It's supposed to be because he's so passionate and jealous, but it's a pretty clear example of, physical intimidation.
So it goes beyond just the emotional stuff. There's actual physical aggression, too.
Yeah, and I think that's important to acknowledge. The book doesn't really condemn it, and that's where things get kind of blurry, that line between like what's entertaining and what sends a potentially harmful message.
Yeah, I get that. It's like the book is giving these mixed signals. On the one hand, it's this super passionate romance, but on the other hand, it's almost normalizing these behaviors that are just not okay in a healthy relationship.
Exactly. That's why it's important to, read with a critical eye. You can enjoy the story, get caught up in the romance and all that, but also be able to step back and say, okay, this is fiction. What might be entertaining on the page isn't necessarily how we want to see relationships play out in real life.
Right. So you're encouraging an informed reading experience. Engage with the story, but don't forget to think critically about what you're reading.
Exactly. And I think that's especially important with books that deal with these big themes,
Hmm.
love, relationships, power dynamics. It's a chance for us to think about our own values, our own boundaries, what we will and won't accept in our own lives.
I love that. It's like you're saying, reading can be more than just entertainment. It can be a way to learn and grow. Now, I'm curious, if someone is looking for a romance that focuses on a strong, healthy relationship, are there authors or books that you'd recommend instead?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many amazing authors who write about love in a way that's both passionate and respectful. If you're looking for stories with healthy communication, trust, mutual respect, that kind of thing, I'd recommend Helen Hong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's great. Her stories are super heartwarming, often about characters with diverse backgrounds and experiences. And the way she portrays relationships, it's realistic but also really aspirational.
I've heard good things about her.
Yeah.
Any other recommendations?
Oh, for sure. Talia Hibbert is another one. Her books are just like full of humor and warmth. Her
Wow.
characters are so relatable, and the relationships she creates, they feel passionate but also grounded in mutual respect and understanding.
Okay, those are some great suggestions. So even if Beautiful Disaster isn't your cup of tea, there are plenty of other options for readers who want a romance that's both satisfying and respectful.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really positive thing to see in the romance genre. There's this growing demand for stories that reflect the complexity of real relationships, the challenges and the good parts, without romanticizing stuff that's unhealthy or harmful.
Right, and I think that's a great place to wrap up our analysis of Beautiful Disaster. So we've got a book that's, well, a bit of a mixed bag. It's a page turner, but it's got some problematic stuff that needs a critical eye. And we've also got some fantastic alternative recommendations for those who are looking for something different.
Exactly. At the end of the day, the decision of whether or not to read Beautiful Disaster is a personal one. Hopefully, our conversation has given you all the info you need to make that decision for yourself.
I agree. This has been super insightful, so thank you so much for breaking all this down and sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. It really makes you think, like, why are we so drawn to these bad boys even when we know they're probably not good for us?
Yeah, it's like we all want that fairy tale ending, but we kind of have to ignore some big warning signs to get there. But I think what you've done such a great job of explaining today is that it's important to be aware of those signs, not just in books, but in real life too.
Exactly. We can enjoy a good romance and escape for a bit without, forgetting about reality.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that these characters aren't real. What they do in the story, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how relationships should be for us.
Right. So for our listener who's still trying to decide about Beautiful Disaster, what's the final word? Is it worth reading or what?
Well, I'd say if you're going into it knowing what to expect, like all the stuff we've talked about, the problematic parts, and you just want a quick, steamy read, then sure, you might enjoy it. But if you're someone who is sensitive to like depictions of toxic relationships or you want a romance that's more about healthy dynamics, then I definitely recommend checking out some of those other authors we talked about.
Makes sense. It's all about knowing what you want and setting those boundaries for yourself. Beautiful Disaster is definitely a book that gets people talking, and it's given us a lot to think about. So thank you again for helping us navigate all of this.
You're welcome. It was great to be here.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you decide to check out Beautiful Disaster or maybe explore one of our other recommendations, remember to keep thinking critically. And most importantly, happy reading. Until next time.